Will everyone please join me in Gassho as I read the words of our founder, Master Shinran Shonin. Shakyamuni Tathagata appeared in this world solely to teach the ocean-like primal vow of Amida. We, an ocean of beings and an evil age of 5 defilements, should entrust ourselves to the Tathagata's words of truth. When the one thought moment of joy arises, nirvana is attained without severing blind passions. When ignorant and wise, even grave offenders and slanderers of the Dharma, all alike, turn and enter Shinjin, they are like waters that on entering the ocean become one in taste with it. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Good morning, everyone. Today we chanted the Shoshin Nembutsuge. And I apologize, I know it's a little long. Maybe some of you don't have the patience for it. But I want to just put some perspective in mind that, this chant is chanted almost every day at Nishi Hongwanji. So at the 6 a.m. service, when you go to the Amida Buddha Hall, they chant Sambutsuge, and then after that's finished, you get up and then you walk over to the Founders Hall, Goeido, where you chant the Shoshin Nembutsuge, along with the Wasan that go with it as well. I do want to keep time in mind, right? So I don't force you all to do the Nembutsu Wasan part, but maybe someday we'll be able to do like a whole Shoshin Nembutsuge service where we can chant them all, because Wasan are supposed to be very pleasant to listen to, and they're way more melodic, so they're, very nice to follow along with. The quote that I said to you today comes from the Shoshin Nembutsuge, the thing that we chanted. The Nyorai Shoi Koshuse Yuisetsu Mida Hongan Kai Go Joku Akuji Gunjo Kai O Shin Nyorai Nyojitsu Gon. Right. So first off, this is the part of the Shoshinge where Shinran really declares to us why Shakyamuni Buddha came to this world, right? Why Shakyamuni, appeared in this world. And it was to teach us the ocean-like primal vow of Amida Buddha's wisdom and compassion. And when I'm talking about the Bodhisattva way, right, Amida Buddha has a story too, where they started off as Bodhisattva Dharmakara. They were not a full Buddha yet. But once again, they vow to save all sentient beings before they become a Buddha. So now all sentient beings who wish to be born in Amida Buddha's Pure Land are definitely born there. And again, this isn't to say that this is like a heaven or like a place that you dwell in eternity forever, like a resort or something like that, right? This is not like an endless vacation. The Pure Land is there to allow us to become enlightened. The Pure Land is there to assist our full awakening, to actually become one with thusness, to become one with nirvana. It is the realm of nirvana. Okay, so we can't think of, or we should not think of the Pure Land as this sort of like sandals resort where we get to just drink Mai Tais and sit on the beach all day. This is where we are fully awakened. And then, of course, we are also taken off the wheel of samsara, the wheel of birth and death. But the whole reason why this pattern exists, or this whole thing exists, is to assist others in going there as well. Not necessarily to go to their doors and knock on their doors and try to convert them, but in the fact that when we as human beings are able to encounter the Nembutsu teaching, wow, how does that make us feel? And how does that encourage us to interact with the world around us? So if the Nembutsu teaching truly speaks to us, that should affect how we interact with the people around us in the world, right? Not as trying to convert them or saying, hey, have you heard the good word? But in how we treat them, right? How we view them, right? So much as human beings, we view ourselves as superior to this person or that person. We look at a person, and again, as we were talking about, the World Cup is happening. I'm not a big soccer person, by the way, I'm sorry, or football person. I'm not really into that. But, again, one of the great things is that it does bring a lot of countries together. It does bring a lot of, awareness around the fact that we are not the only ones on this world. We are not the only people who exist. The same thing happens when the Olympics happen. But going back to Jodo Shinshu Buddhism and the Bodhisattva way, I want us to remember why this teaching, this Nembutsu teaching, is so precious in the first place. First off, Shakyamuni Buddha realized that he would not be around forever. Shakyamuni Buddha realized that he would need to have a teaching that would last throughout the ends of time. And the Nembutsu teaching is the perfect teaching for that. Why? Because all we do is put our hands together and say, Namo Amida Butsu. Now believe me, there's a whole thesis of why this teaching is, why this teaching works or why this teaching is, valid. And it's in this book. Shinran Shonin wrote the Kyogyo Shinsho, where it's essentially a thesis where he defends this teaching, for those people who may say this is not totally correct, right? But he wrote a thesis, or what we could call a dissertation, that's about this thick, that explains why the Pure Land teaching is a valid teaching. And maybe like 80% of that is actually quotations from other sutras and other scholars, like the 7 Pure Land masters who commented on this. So believe me, there is religious depth to this teaching. There is a very heavy and a very thorough explanation as to why Namo Amida Butsu is a valid teaching. But once again, as human beings, we get caught in this suffering where we desire things, we want things. I'm not going to lie, I have to double check, but I bought a lottery ticket, a couple days ago. I don't think I won. Nobody won the Mega Millions. Wouldn't it be wonderful if I won that? How many of you bought a lottery ticket? Be honest. Okay, wait, no. Okay, only 4 people raised their hands. Okay, good for you. Good for you. For those who don't, maybe you don't buy into that. That's fine. That's okay, right? But at the same time, it shows the humanness of who we are, right? Even if you don't buy lottery tickets, I'm certain there's other things that you work for, right? Whether it be the clothes that you wear or a car that you may want to buy or maybe what others might consider to be frivolous things that are not needed but desired. And this is part of what it means to be human, right? This is part of our suffering. We cling to things. We want things. We also don't want things to change. Of course, for me right now, you all know that I'm a father, that I became a new father. And already, just in the 3 months that my son has been alive, he's changed a lot, right? For many of you who are parents or grandparents are nodding, like, I know what that feels like. And, of course, he's sleeping better. He's like giving us longer stretches. So I'm so happy about that. But the other thing is realizing that, he might, but then he also may, there's such a thing as called sleep regression, right? The other thing, though, is that the preciousness of this baby that I'm a father to, right? Do I want him to grow up to become a toddler? Do I want him to grow up to become a teenager? Of course I do, but I also don't, right? I want him to stay a little baby forever. I want him to want me forever, because in the blink of an eye, I know he's going to turn into a leave me alone, dad, go away, dad, you're wrong, dad, all of those things. He's going to turn into that. It's inevitable. He's going to think he knows more than me. Maybe in some things he might, but he's going to think he knows life more than I do, right? All of these things, all of the grief that I put my parents through. And my father's going to stand back and watch and laugh. Like, ha ha, you know what it feels like now, right? This cycle continues, right? But of course, with all of that, the biggest human delusion that we all humans have is wanting things to stay the exact same in that moment. I want this to be the exact same way, that it will be tomorrow. I want tomorrow to feel like today. I want next week to not change anything. You know, it's amazing because Tetsuo has grown out of his newborn clothes and he's in the 3 to 6 month range now. And it's just amazing. Like I see like what we already have 1 year clothes and I'm like, he's going to be this big? It's unfathomable to me. But there are so many parts of me too that want him to stay as a precious baby who smiles at me, who gives me this chuckle when I kind of toss him around and like hold him and like take him on a I don't literally take him on a roller coaster ride, but you know what I mean. He loves it when I kind of like help him fly. And that childlike wonder is something that really speaks to me. But things can't stay the same as much as I may want them to. You know, I recently started watching Peter Pan-like things again. How many of you have seen the Robin Williams movie Hook? Good, I'm glad. You know, that now as a dad, that movie means something so different to me now. Right? I used to identify with those lost boys, but now I identify not necessarily with Peter, but with this idea of never wanting to grow up. Not that I want to go back to being a child, but I want my son to stay the same, to stay precious and young, right? I don't want to ever think of my son struggling, right? I always want him to be happy. No joke. You know, I video chatted with Cindy, with Reverend Cindy last night to say goodnight, and I could see my son starting to cry when he heard my voice. I don't know if he knows that I'm not there, or, he hears my voice, but I'm not there. But it broke my heart. Every time my son starts to cry, it breaks my heart a little bit. I don't want that. But that's the nature of suffering. That is the reality. Babies are going to cry. People are going to cry. Right? This is, I can know all the intellectual things I know, right? I accept the fact that I accept the fact that babies cry, but I also don't accept it because I want to do everything in my power to ensure that my son doesn't suffer. But at the end of the day, he will go through hardships. He will suffer. Even if there's like nothing, even if Reverend Cindy and I did nothing wrong in the day, right? We got him his naps in, sometimes the baby just gets overwhelmed. And they start to cry, and that's the only way that they can express their emotions. And it breaks our heart because it makes me feel like a failure. It makes me feel like I did something wrong, even if I didn't. That is human emotion. That is suffering. Now, the great thing about Jodo Shinshu Buddhism is that it teaches us that we can have all of those feelings. We can have all of these doubts. We can have all of these things, and we're still okay. We're still accepted. We're still all children in the eyes of Buddha. We are still safe with Namo Amida Butsu, as we are our imperfect selves. This is what it means to exist in the world as a human being. And the Nembutsuge teaching understands that. Lots of times people mistake Buddhism as this lateral, every step of the way type of religion. And in some ways it can be. But when we think about our humanness, when we think about how we are as people, we have good days and we have bad days. We have days where we're happy, we have days where we're sad, angry, or suffering. And the Nembutsuge teaching is there with us the entire way we are, the entire time, no matter what state we are in. Okay? So when we think about Buddhism, it's not this religion, or at least Jodo Shinshu Buddhism is not this religion of, okay, you do this practice, you do this practice, you do this practice, you do this practice, and then once you've completed this practice, you're all good, right? You won't experience this type of anxiety anymore. All of you parents in the room, actually, maybe some of you are grandparents, right? Even though your children are full-grown functioning adults, are married, maybe have kids of your own, that worry never goes away. That anxiety will never leave you. It never ends. And again, I took that line from Parenthood, the 1980s movie with Steve Martin. It never ends. You never cross the finish line. You never cross the goal line. It doesn't matter how functional. Your kid could be a millionaire for all you care, and you still will have this worry as an adult. You never stop worrying about their well-being. I'm still, right now, thinking about my son as I'm talking to you here right now. I'm thinking about Reverend Cindy's state as I'm talking to you right now. Okay? And in all of that anxiety, the Nembutsu teaching is still here for us. Right? And again, the Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu isn't going to solve your problems, like the physical problems of your world. But what it is there to do is to remind you that wisdom and compassion of the Buddha is here with you every step of the way. This is what the Bodhisattva path is like. Right? That there is this presence of wisdom and compassion that continues to walk with you no matter what state you are in. And this is why bodhisattvas, exist in this realm of Buddhism. Another bodhisattva you may have heard is Jizo Bosatsu, right? You've seen these little bald Buddha statues or little bald-headed statues, and lots of times they, these Jizo Bosatsu statues have little red bibs tied to them. Sadly, Jizo Bosatsu is associated with things that aren't very happy, because in Japan, Jizo Bosatsu statues are erected when a child dies. And we never want to think of that. We never want to think of a child, of a parent outliving a child. But that does happen in the world sometimes. And that's what Jizo Bosatsu is there for. But Jizo Bosatsu is also there to shepherd those people who are currently dwelling in the hell realms. And the Jizo Bosatsu, or Bodhisattva, vowed that he would never leave hell until all sentient beings are no longer there. And yet, at that time, and so it almost seems like an impossible task. And Jizo Bosatsu doesn't interfere, right? All that Jizo Bosatsu is there for is to walk with you through those realms of hell, to be with you every step of the way. So when we think about Amida Buddha, right, the Buddha of wisdom and compassion, we think about ultimate acceptance. We as human beings, as imperfect as we are, and yet we are still saved by this Buddha. When I say saved, I mean we are assured birth in the Pure Land. We are assured enlightenment, right? And there's no special, or there's no secret tantric practice that we have to do, right? It's, for those of you who do yoga, wonderful. For those of you who partake in sitting in zazen meditation, great. For those of you who count the beads and do mantras, right? Wonderful, right? But that's not required to enter the Pure Land. That's not required to be born in the Pure Land. We're already assured birth. And when we truly come to accept that, that's when we put our hands together and say, Namo Amida Butsu. The realization that because we as humans, and we are humanity, because of that, this Amida Buddha came to this world to save us. Shakyamuni Buddha told of Amida Buddha's wisdom and compassion for this reason. So you notice how, again, as modern as we are, as far along in the world as we may be, or as modern as we think we may be, the human condition is still very much present. Our desires haven't stopped. Our craving hasn't stopped. Our need for things hasn't stopped. And so this Nembutsu teaching continues to endure throughout the ages, because for the fact that it is so accessible to us. Shinran Shonin, our founder, deliberately, I think, presented this teaching to the common people of Japan, because he's told them that there is a Buddhism for you. You don't have to be rich, you don't have to be wealthy, you don't have to donate thousands upon thousands of dollars to the Enryakuji organization in order to sort of get a hope of enlightenment. All that's needed is Namo Amida Butsu, right? It's great that you donate to temples. It's great that you donate to this temple. That's wonderful. But if you can't, you're not thrown away. You're not discarded. You're not, nothing says that there is no hope for you. You are still loved. You are still cared for, and compassion is still there for you. That is the teaching of Namo Amida Butsu. So I would like to thank all of you very much for, once again, listening to the ramblings of a somewhat, not quite sleep-deprived father. But at the same time, I wanted to impart this because my time here, once again, is limited. I'm only going to be coming back, well, I shouldn't say this way, but officially as your supervising minister, I'll be coming back one more time in July to officially hand things off to Reverend Magnan, who I have every confidence in. But I also wanted to make sure that I was able to say my piece on what's important to me as a Jodo Shinshu priest of this tradition. Why is this teaching so precious to me? Why do I want to chant the Shoshin Nembutsuge? And as Dr. Al said, there's, like you notice, as a requirement, if you want to be ordained in the Jodo Shinshu priesthood, you have to memorize the Shoshin Nembutsuge. It's, end of discussion. You have to memorize 2 versions of it. And so I wanted to share with you some of the teachings that come from this chant and why it's so important. So please join me in Gassho. Shakyamuni Tathagata appeared in this world solely to teach the ocean-like primal vow of Amida. We, an ocean of beings and an evil age of 5 defilements, should entrust ourselves to the Tathagata's words of truth. When the one-thought moment of joy arises, nirvana is attained without severing blind passions. When ignorant and wise, even grave offenders and slanderers of the Dharma, all alike turn and enter Shinjin, they are like the waters that, on entering the ocean, become one in taste with it. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandats, namandats, nam.